And we have some more of the conversation for you. It's Adrienne Lawrence once again. This time I am joined by Democratic strategist Desiree Tims, who also happens to be president and CEO of Innovation Ohio. Thanks for joining us, Desiree.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, so we know that there has been a lot going on since the reversal of Roe v. Wade, and especially in areas of the South in particular. And so following the Supreme Court ruling on abortion, with these recent votes kind of questioning where the future of contraception is gonna go, what do you think people should be focused on?
I think people should absolutely focus on voting, right? Because what we're seeing from the Republican base and the GOP is that they are out to attack women and people who get pregnant. They are coming for our birth control. They are coming for micromanaging how people have sex and who people choose to have sex with. And they are going to use law, policy, and hypocrisy to attack those rights.
Oh, absolutely. It definitely seems to be the case. That's something we seem to wake up to with new headlines each and every day. And I think recently with South Carolina outlawing a website that would tell you how to get an abortion. Is that correct?
We're seeing that. We're seeing here in Ohio, we have extreme MAGA Republicans who control our legislature. And as soon as Roe fell, they enacted a 6-week ban. We know that they are coming for Plan B. Many people heard the story about the 10-year-old Ohioan who needed to travel to Indiana in order to have an abortion. And we saw Republicans attack her credibility, and her doctor. And so what is happening at the state level across the South, across the Midwest, across states that are controlled by Republicans at all levels is pure extremism. And we have not seen the worst of it yet. We have not seen and heard the stories that are still to come since the fall of Roe.
No, that's the scary part in part, because we're seeing these stories come up with the 10-year-old victim of rape having to go over to Indiana for an abortion, with the mothers who are having ectopic pregnancies and unable to access care, or even just have already had some kind of sepsis going on. And it just, the stories are absolutely wild. And to think that these doctors and nurses and medical care providers won't help and assist someone until they are essentially threatening their entire lives is very, very scary. When will the Democratic Party really wake up? Because it's clear that the Republicans do not care about the health and safety of women.
I think it is time for people to really lean into what's to come, right? And Democrats have to tighten up that messaging, have to tighten up what we're saying and how we get people to the polls, because the Republicans have been playing a long game, and they've been playing it for decades in state legislatures and state Supreme Courts, and through the federal judiciary, through Donald Trump packing the court with unqualified conservative judges. And now we are reaping the benefit of the havoc led by Republicans. And so it's something that we really have to lean into to make sure our people are voting, and that we're putting people who are pro-choice in office, and regardless of the D, and people who are going to stand up and do what's right for people. Because again, Republicans have been playing the long game. And so what we are in now is in a situation where we have to play catch up.
Absolutely, and it does seem like a lot of Democrats out there simply are trying to abide by what I'd call as old rules. These thought that they can have gentlemen's agreements, reach across the aisle, so on and so forth. Whereas the Republicans seem to be out here pushing every envelope, breaking every law, and doing what's necessary to achieve their agenda. I don't know if there's a way in which you close the gap, or if the Democrats just need to be ready to take the gloves off and stop, pussyfooting.
I think we're seeing some Democrats do just that. They're taking the gloves off, they're fighting back, and pushing hard and coming through with different policy ideas in order to save the rest of us, right, from what the Republicans are doing. But that's right, it is really a different day, because the Republicans, they don't believe in rules. They don't believe in laws. They say that they're the party of law and order, but their actions show otherwise. And so it is interesting in trying to think of like how you get creative and fighting back using the system when the Republicans are just abdicating everything that has to do with the system. So I think we are going to see more people pay attention to state court races. We are seeing more people getting engaged in different policy issues at the state level, right? Because a lot of the power is at the states and is with state lawmakers. And so it's really important that people pay attention to what's happening in the state legislatures, these governors, state Supreme Court races, North Carolina, Ohio, just to name a few, are really important this cycle. And so voting is going to be ever more important, and making sure that our people are running for office. You don't like who's on the ballot, get your signature and your petitions in, and run yourself.
And so in addition to the whole voting and also hopefully getting out there and running the race, it also seems a matter of getting people enthused, because I think a lot of people out there feel like their voices aren't being heard, like the promises that were made to them about coming out and voting the last time are still not necessarily being fulfilled. We see that with President Biden and forgiving student loans. We are seeing people being slow on the draw to actually fulfill their promises. So what would you say to the Democratic Party in terms of getting people again to come out and to vote when it's just been a bunch of empty promises?
Yeah, well, during the Biden administration, no one has had to pay a single student loan payment. So that's one thing worth voting for. I think there have been discussions to talk about student loan forgiveness on the table. And so I'm hopeful that I will be a beneficiary of such. I have a ton of student loan debt. I'm sure you do too, Adrian. Law school is not cheap. So we definitely want to see those policies come through. But we've also been stopped by the very slim majority that we have in the Democrats who are from red states like Joe Manchin and others, blocking some of the agenda items such as the Build Back Better agenda that was led and amplified and championed by President Biden and the administration.
Yes, it's definitely very difficult. And I know so many of us would definitely like to benefit from a student loan forgiveness, but unfortunately I'm boxed out because of income, which kind of sucks because I've known plenty of lawyers who are making easy six figures, but when your student loans are six figures plus, it doesn't matter. So it just seems like the system that you can't win either way. But and it's been great also not paying student loans.
We have to believe that we can win. I said we have to believe that we can win and push policies that will help us, because yes, if you have six figures plus, which I'm going to borrow that from you from now on, in student loan debt, the payments are no joke.
Yeah, they are. Oh my God, don't get me started. One of my colleagues went to Yale and for undergrad, and he walked out with I think like $300,000 in loans. And then, and so when he went to law school, let me tell you, the school he went to was not the highest rated school, but they gave him like a full ride. And the thing is, it's like the system has to get better in terms of meeting us where we are, because the reality is that there may be a number of us out there, especially people of color who pursued professional degrees where they need more of our presence. And yet we have these golden handcuffs stuck on us, in part because we have so much debt that cannot be ameliorated because we don't have generational wealth. Anyways, it just seems very much to be very cyclical, and the approach is taken to be not as nuanced as they need to be. But again, that is something that hopefully the Biden administration will actually step up and address. But in terms of voting as well as people running for office, what else would you recommend people do, or even that the Democratic Party needs to do in order to get more people involved and to truly make the change?
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand how bills are passed into law. And so it is very important that you do not take your foot off the gas. As a former Capitol Hill staffer, I also was able to see who's coming in the doors, lobbying and pushing for their issues, how communities are organized around issues, and that can really make change. So I think if people can focus on getting your neighbors, getting people who share issues. So Adrian and I will link up and we're gonna go to the Hill and have that meeting on student loans. Like that's how the change happens though, right? You have to find allies who are suffering from the same problems, because if you're having a hardship, I guarantee you someone else is having that same hardship times 10 and others. And so really coming together to push for your issues, regardless of who's in power, who has the majority, who's in the minority, raise your voice about the issues that are important to you and mobilize and organize right where you are.
Absolutely. And in terms of abortion and getting those changes out there so they do not continue to roll forward, affecting contraception rights as well as marital rights, what else would you suggest that people do?
You really have to pay attention to the state Supreme Court and state legislatures in your states, because one of the things that came from that case that the Republicans did was they gave it back to the states. And so throughout history, we know when we hear states' rights, that has usually been used as a tool to disenfranchise and to cripple the disadvantaged and the unheard. And so what is very important as we think about what's to come is that we raise our voice and we lean in on state legislatures. Make sure that you're voting and paying attention to who is at the state house representing you, because the extremism that's coming from Texas, that's coming from Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, Ohio, these are state elected officials. They're not in DC, they're up the road from you, and they have just as much power to control contraception, birth control, in vitro fertilization, and so much more because of what came down in Dobbs. And so pay attention to that.
Absolutely, paying attention, staying invested, and hopefully keeping the hope alive is something that we all need to do and invest in. And I want to thank you so much for joining us. And can you please tell the viewers where they can find you and find more information about you?
Absolutely. I'm the president and CEO of Innovation Ohio. You can visit our website, innovationohio.org. You can also follow me on Twitter at Tims Desiree. And I'd love to continue the conversation online.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Desiree Tims, founder and CEO of